Hey, true believers, Chris Mack coming at you at Gen 13, number 1. And I know what you're thinking. You're saying, didn't you already go over Gen 13, number 1? I did. But this was the number 1 after the number 1, comics. The first part, I think it was 4 or 5 issues, was the mini-series of how the kids were brought to the Genesis program. And then this is kind of afterwards where they escaped and started the team. So you could basically say the mini-series is like Gen 13 Volume 1. This would be Gen 13 Volume 2. The print date on this one is March 1995. And one thing about this book that I have to laugh about in hindsight is how many 90s reference can you cram into a book? Well, go through, see how many you get. So we open up on this really violent fight, and we see these two, one with a sai, one saying, I'm going to use my special lightning. Oh no, the super size slash. And then it goes, that means I win. And we flip over, and it goes, fatality. And so if you guys get the Mortal Kombat, as where this is called the Mortal Conflict, there's one. And it's Roxy and Grunge, of course, these two being the more eccentric ones of the bunch, as where Rainmaker, Burnout, and Fairchild are a little more serious. Caitlin Fairchild, the one I just said, she's the leader. And I don't know, one thing I've always liked about Gen 13 is I've always loved these two. Like when I read Generation X, I always enjoyed Chamber and Skin. And then these two, you can kind of see that they like each other, but it's more of in a friendship way. I don't know, I haven't read enough Gen 13 to see if it actually flourishes into anything else. I think I've only gotten up to issue 20, and I'd love to go back and try to reread those, and I have to find them again because I sold them. So if you guys have these, don't sell your books. I promise you're going to get freaking seller's remorse. I have it, and I hate every minute of it. Anyway, there's credits. Here they are. Among Friends and Nemesis. Brandon Troy and J. Scott Campbell. Script, stories, pencils. Alex Gardner, inks. Richard Starkey's and Chromacraft doing letters. Wendy Fouts, colorists. And I like that even though this is older, you could still see that J. Scott Campbell artwork, because he always has the doe eyes when he does the girls and the very sleek design. I mean, he's refined it over the years, but you can just see where he was kind of starting here back in the 90s. And I just love how Grunge is just giving Roxy such a hard time, and there's a reason. I believe her code name is Freefall. I'm not 100% sure on that, but she's able to make people, light as a feather and then just drop them. And what I like about Caitlin is she does remind me of Cyclops. She's not as stern as Scott, but she's talking to Mr. Lynch, and she's saying, I don't think I should be the leader anymore. And Lynch is just like, trust me, Caitlin, you're the best one for the job. Without you, the other kids would still be Ivana's guinea pigs at Project Genesis. You could have walked away from it all, but you chose to go back and rescue them. I couldn't just leave them there. A good leader doesn't abandon his or her people. It's the only way this team survives. If your father were alive today, I know he'd be proud of what you've accomplished. And what I like here is it shows, again, how the leader always takes on the brunt of the responsibility. If you remember back in, Uncanny X-Men, well, it would have been X-Men Volume 1, but Uncanny X-Men 95, way back in the day, after Thunderbird gives his life, how Scott takes that death and it hits him, and he talks about how things had changed from when they were just students, and he's having a hard time coping with that loss to his team on his watch. And here you see it again with Caitlin, who's this young girl who initially just wanted to get her computer science degree, got swept up in Project Genesis, and now she's been thrown in, this young woman having to take on all this responsibility. And then we're introduced to Sarah Rainmaker, and her introduction is a bit eccentric. She reminds me of Danny Moonstar to a degree, but Danny was a little more reserved, as where Sarah, I mean, poor Anna the maid, she's like, Sarah Rainmaker, what in the world do you think you're doing, young lady? Just taking a quick dip in the pool before dinner. Don't worry, Anna. I do know how to swim. And she's like, without a bathing suit? And Grunge and Bobby, her birthday suit just works fine for me, Anna. Water looks a little chilly though, doesn't it? And again, Danny, she was always a little more sheepish, as where Sarah, she's a little more in your face. She kind of reminds me of Psylocke after she merged with Quanon and became the ninja assassin. This reminds me of Psylocke in that degree. She goes, it's not as nice as the freshwater spring back home, but it'll do. What's wrong, guys? Not afraid to get a little wet, are you? So it's just kind of the way they kind of bring you up to speed on the team and their mannerisms kind of shows that you don't need to read the first volume. I mean, if you want to go back, see where Project Genesis began, more on John Lynch and his connections to Caitlin Fairchild, then that adds some more depth to the story. But diving into this one, if you'd missed that miniseries, you're okay. You get brought up on who all the teammates are, where they are, which is San Diego, California. How Roxy's more of a young partier. And I love how here the club that she goes to, it's, like Soil Machine. And this kind of reminds me of the old abandoned warehouse that you see on Wayne's World. When they walk up to, I think it was Chris Farley in that movie, that was the bouncer or whatever, and they're like, who's playing tonight? And he's like, the Shitty Beatles. They any good? No. Also, it's just not a clever name. So that just reminds me of a scene from Wayne's World, because you always see like these type of abandoned factories and whatnot being clubs, which I've never seen one in my life, but then again, I live somewhere that's not as out there as California was. But the artwork, again, just really makes it pop for its time. And I just like how it shows that Roxy just wants to go escape from all the responsibilities she's dealing with and just kind of lose herself on the dance floor. But I like how even though we have this main conflict of the book, we get some buildup on this mysterious stranger. We don't get much on him. He does something to Roxy. And then he just kind of disappears to make way for, let me find where it's at, these guys. One-Eyed Joe, this guy was Hardball, Rake, and then this girl's name I think is, what was her name? Hold on, what's her name? I'll get there, just a minute. Jade, I had to kind of reread it. So they didn't really have a team name, but the artwork is amazing. I like just how much effort they put into this book. And again, this was really in the early days of digital art, so this was a lot more hand done. And this is what I miss about these older books, is that it took more effort to really make your book pop, and you really had to make sure you had a decent enough story and decent enough artwork to really kick it off. Because back in the day, if the artwork sucked, you'd toss your comic in the bin, as where a lot of more modern stuff, it just feels so flat compared to this. And that kind of reminds me of this little background joke here where it shows the ska band that's trying to fly her, and it goes, show canceled due to overwhelming lack of interest. And that's kind of my mantra of a lot of modern books. So be that as it may, we're going to go ahead and continue. And now Roxy thinks that these guys are after her, and she's like, what did I do? And so she's trying to get away, but you come to find out they're actually after this thing called the Queelock. And she just sort of like, she's like, that she's making fun of them, and they're like, who are you calling a mutant freak? It's just a figure of speech, nothing personal. Give me the Queelock, and I promise you a quick and painless death. Otherwise, it will be slow and excruciatingly painful. And at that point, here's where we actually see the team suited up and together. And I remember reading Wizard magazine. If you guys have never read an issue of Wizard, that was how growing up in a small town that had 0 comic shops, or they would come, and then like months or maybe like a year or two later they'd go under. I remember this always being the Image that they used to promote Gen 13. That's where I first heard of Gen 13 and Spawn, when Image was really making its hit in the market. And it made me want to read all these titles, Pit, Spawn, Gen 13, freaking Witchblade, all that good stuff. And this image right here is always held in my memory for that point. And now, again, going back to 90s, you know, for a big guy, grunge is able to kind of move around. He's like, bonsai, baby. He's like, whoa, babe alert. Now what's a hot chick like dude doing with these ugly losers? Out to make a king's ransom by retrieving the Queelock and expunging the lives of you and your friends. She all right. Time for reality check there, babe. Now, when you hear that, do you not think of like Michelangelo? It really hits. It reminds me of Mikey like to a T. So again, some more references, but that's just the personality of grunge. And I like the way they talk. Each character is more refined. As where Roxy, you know, she wants to cut loose, but she can also be like grunge. So she kind of can move around in terms of her thought patterns and her personality. Grunge is, you know, he can be serious, but he really paints on the heavy kind of dumb guy. Caitlin is more the serious, again, leader type. Bobby, he can, you know, has the normal characteristics of a young man, but is also can be serious too. And so I like when they're able to give characters personalities, as where if each character sounds the same and they can be interchanged, then who gives a shit? So that's why I've always liked grunge. You know, Jade here knocks him out and he goes, oh, look at all the pretty girls. You know, I think she really likes me. But again, I'll talk about what I like here in a minute with grunge. But going over to Sarah, you know, she's taking out a rake. She's just moving. And again, you kind of see how she's able to sort of joke, but also being serious because she says, you know, match for an Apache warrior. And same with Caitlin and Roxy, how they're just able to wipe the floor with these creeps. And then grunge, you know, Jade's saying, you know, it's too bad that I have to slice you open and ruin that pretty tattoo, but you're so dumb. And he's like, mess with my tattoo? She's like, what are you doing? He's like, just bonding my molecules in my body with the ones in your sword so I can do this. So I like that grunge can use sort of the dumb, jockish, rocker mentality to bring his enemies in close. And so we get some great action and sort of a happy ending with another teammate added to the roster, which is Queelock. And Queelock, to me, like Roxy reminds me of more of a punk rock Kitty Pryde, and Queelock reminds me of more of a Space Mouse Lockheed. I was like, oh God, what's the dragon's name? And again, a lot of these people that left Image were majority artists, writers for X-Men books and Spider-Man books. So you can really see the influence that they had on the early Image comics. That's why a lot of the early ones were hero books, team books like this, Wildcats, Youngbloods, etc., so forth. And I can kind of see where the market flopped in the 90s because of that. But going back and reading stuff like this, I don't know, there's just a special place in my heart for it. And Gen 13 will always be one of those books. So if you guys have enjoyed what you've seen here, definitely make it a point to go take like a weekend in your local comic shop. Just sit down and start digging through all the back issues, dollar bins, and see if you can't find these books, because they may not be worth much, but who gives a damn? It's fun, the artwork's beautiful, and you're gonna have a good time. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. Yeah, it's nice to find keys and the 1/125,000th of a variant, blah, 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 blah. And that's part of being the collector process. But if you want good quality, fun storytelling, stuff like this is definitely gonna be up your alley. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little 13 bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel. We love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I will make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.